today we are joined by Michigan State Superintendent Dr. Glenn Maleyko. We're going to have a conversation about the role he plays in shaping education across our state and how he's approaching it early in his tenure. We're going to talk about what the state superintendent is responsible for, how state-level decisions affect classrooms and communities, and we have some tough questions coming from Michigan's most important education leaders. It's a conversation about vision, responsibility, and where Michigan's education system is headed.
Can't wait to get into the show because when we talk about education, we're really talking about the future of our state, its economy, equity, and the well-being of every child. So whether you're in Detroit or the UP, a parent or a policymaker, this conversation is for you. This is Our State of Education on 760 WJR. Welcome back to Our State of Education here on 760 WJR, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation, which invests over $20 million each year to strengthen education for students in Detroit and across Michigan. Now, to guide us into today's conversation, here's your host, Skillman President and CEO, Angelique Power.
Thank you, Lloyd. Education in Michigan is at an important moment. We are seeing momentum in areas like early literacy, alongside ongoing challenges in making sure students receive the supports they need to succeed. These issues may look different from district to district, but they're all connected by a shared system and by decisions made at the state level. That's where the role of state superintendent comes in. This position carries responsibility for setting direction, bringing coherence to a complex education system, and supporting the work happening in classrooms across Michigan. At the Skillman Foundation, we believe education works best when the people closest to the classrooms have a meaningful voice in shaping policy. Students, parents, educators, and communities all bring essential insight into what's working and where systems fall short. Strong statewide leadership helps connect those voices to policy and practices in ways that are consistent and centered on students. Today's conversation is about how that leadership shows up in Michigan right now, how statewide vision is set, how local communities and state leadership can work together, and how priorities like literacy and student supports become real for students in classrooms across the state. So our guest stepped into his role just a few short months ago. Dr. Glenn Maleyko became Michigan's state superintendent at the end of last year of 2025, bringing more than 30 years of experience in public education. Most recently, he was superintendent of Dearborn Public Schools, where his leadership helped make the district a statewide model for literacy and graduation rates and earned recognition across the country, including a National Blue Ribbon Award or several National Blue Ribbon Awards. His leadership has extended far and wide. He served as president of the Michigan Association of Superintendents and Administrators and as a member of the National Superintendent Governing Board. Dr. Maleyko is widely recognized as being extremely collaborative and an effective education leader. This matters so much in guiding our system. We are really grateful to have you join us. Welcome to Our State of Education, Dr. Maleyko.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, Angelique and Lloyd. I really, it's wonderful to be here. And thank you. Didn't deserve that kind of intro, but we'll take it. And,
you earned it.
And I was glad to hear, about student voice and students first in there, because that's a very, very important thing. And I know for Skillman it is, and it is for me at the state level. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
We are going to get into that. We are going to put student voice to the test during this episode. But I want to start with you just as a human being. What drew you to education in the first place?
Sure. So I'm a big hockey player. In fact, I was looking to go to law school. My father, my grandfather, family of attorneys, and I ended up coaching hockey as I was working on my college degree. Had played high competitive junior hockey, and after coaching, I decided that I really wanted to work in education with students. I wanted to get into education and teach and coach. And so what ended up happening is in 1995, I was working on my degree at University of Detroit Mercy, curriculum instruction, and there were Dearborn Public Schools, who I have no ties to prior to that, were recruiting substitute teachers. I signed up Actually, a friend of mine at U of D said, hey, you should go check it out, and I did. And so started as a substitute teacher in the Dearborn schools, worked there for 30 years, multiple positions, a third grade teacher, a fifth grade teacher, principal in an elementary and middle school. And then I got into the human resources. I worked for former State Superintendent Brian Whiston. He was my mentor. I wouldn't be here today without him. He's still with me. He had passed away tragically in 2018, but he's still with me in spirit always. And, then I was superintendent at Dearborn in 2015, spent 10 plus years in that role. And I really got involved on a state level with the Michigan Association of Superintendents, as you mentioned. I just believed in collaboration on a broader level and, working together. I got involved in the National Superintendent Association, and I'd be in Washington and I'd be in Lansing advocating for students. That was Dearborn students and all students. And so I was just very, very passionate about doing the work. And so when this position opened up, it was one that really appealed to me because I just felt like the collaboration, which you mentioned, which is very important. If you want to get things done, you need to collaborate. So I'm going to give you a little hockey. I use hockey quotes, but one of them I'm going to say is, why would you body check your own team? If you're in hockey, it makes no sense to collide into each other, right? So we have so many positive things going on. Let's work together to support our students in public education. And so that's been my motto, and I believe that's why we need to collaborate and work together. And I believe that very important. I've got to collaborate with the State Board of Education, who hired me, the governor's office, feel very good about the relationship we have there, the legislature, different legislators that we're meeting with, parents, superintendents, students, as we mentioned, all school stakeholders, union groups, and it's very important. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that's why I believe you need to build those relationships, and then you have to set goals. And Michigan does have the Top 10 plan, and we're excited to have it. We're looking at maybe renewing that as I'm going around from district to district doing a listening tour to acquire information from the public, from school stakeholders, because it's about our students. We have a lot of strength that's going on in Michigan right now, but we also have rooms for improvement, which is why we're really focusing on the need for literacy. And I was so pleased that the governor stated the state, it was the top priority that she talked about and gave a shout out to the Michigan department for the collaborative work. So, Emma Young and Michelle Richard from her department. And then, working with our state board, we have an excellent board, led by Dr. Pugh, and they're all behind the literacy. So a lot of that started prior to me coming, but we're taking it, we're going to take it, and we're going to run with it. And again, we're not going to body check anybody on our team. We're going to stick together and work together.
Okay, it now makes sense when you did the mic check. The first thing you said was "Go Wings."
Yes,
right?
yes.
So
Die-hard Wings fan. I do not like the Toronto Maple
together.
Leafs. I do not like the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just put that on record.
So tell us, you've been, I understand your path to wanting to work at a state level and have bigger impact. What's the actual difference between being a superintendent for the district and being a state superintendent?
So obviously you're working on the whole state. We're in charge of all the funding that gets channeled into schools. There's different regulations. You're in charge of teacher certification. We're responsible for ensuring that money goes to the appropriate districts and students, the grants we have to work at. What I would say is this: as I've come into the state, there's a lot of learning I have to do at the state level because I really, I hadn't worked there. I have good people like Dr. Carnell. I have my team. I'm going to give them a shout out: Alice-Ann Shrewsbury, Dan Centers, and Karen Carefoot, who are all helping me. We have Ken Coleman here. They're all helping me on state level. But what I'm going to say is I did bring a lot of experience from the local level. Dearborn Public Schools being the third largest district in the state, working for 30 years and 10 plus years. So a lot of that experience, you have direct authority over the local district and the students and the board. And the challenge you have from the state is it is local control. So you have authority in certain areas, but a lot of times, you will get a communication from a parent or someone and, may believe that we have the ability to go in on policy or curriculum or other things, but we don't. That's based on the local districts, based on Michigan law. So that is one of the challenges. We also have to make sure districts are in compliance to make sure in certain areas that they're using the funding appropriately, they're following the law and the rules. And so those are other challenges. So you have to kind of balance the compliance with partnering and working together. But if you don't partner and working together, you're not going to make those move the needle for the sake of those students. So there is a lot of challenges because of the the structure of the education and the local control, but it's there for a purpose, and we need to work together.
So thread that needle for us with a specific example. Science of reading, literacy, one of your top priorities as state superintendent. And as you said, the governor also echoed that. When we come back, we're going to have some questions from other education leaders, and we're going to return to this concept of how do you establish a vision while you have local control.
Well, that's where we'll leave it for this segment of our State of Education, powered by the Skillman Foundation, investing in brighter futures for Detroit's youth and students across Michigan. We'll continue with more from State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Glenn Maleyko, next. And thank you for tuning in to Our State of Education on 760 WJR. Welcome back to Our State of Education, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation, which believes student, parent, and teacher voices must be at the table when decisions are being made about our schools. We're back with our special guest, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Glenn Maleyko. And once again, here's your host, Angelique Power.
Thanks, Lloyd. So we left off in this conversation around what a state superintendent does, and then how does that relate to what the governor's office does, and then the districts. And you were going to give us an example around the science of reading and this literacy push. Yeah. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so we're very pleased, first of all, that the governor's budget recommendation, $625 million to support students and literacy. And so this is where, because of local control and because of the different entities, you've got to work in collaboration. So the governor's budget, but we got to work with the legislator as well. And so I've had lots of meetings with Republicans and Democrats to get support around literacy. So this is where we all come together, and we know the research that teachers and students will it'll be more effective in the classroom if they're trained appropriately. So we've been pushing the science of reading training, specifically letters, as a mandate. This is because of local control. The legislature does have the authority to make decisions with the governor. So we're continuing to move forward on that. We feel very optimistic. And I would just say to them, we have to support districts with the funding. So it's not an unfunded mandate.
So the districts still can opt in. Do they still have the freedom to opt into the science of reading resources?
So right now they can opt into it. We're hoping to do it a mandate, so it'll be required over, let's just say, a 3 to 5 year period.
Okay, so then really what your office does is you help to find best practice around what the materials are. You can work with the governor's office and the legislators to have a mandate, and then the schools also have the opportunity to opt in, or during the mandate, that's what they'll do to improve literacy.
Yes, and the legislatures, a lot of them want to talk to me. They want my opinion, the department and the Board of Education, the state board. You know, what is our opinion on these different legislation initiatives or bills that may get passed? And so we're there to guide them and provide support and recommendations as well.
So bridge building, and we'll come back to that in a different segment. You believe, just as we do, that youth need not only a seat at the table, but they need a microphone also, so their voice can be heard. You are known for traveling with the student's first sign. He's reaching into his pocket to pull it out.
I don't leave home without it.
And we actually took a picture earlier with it. And so we believe in that at Skillman, too. We have young people on our board. We have youth grant makers that are a part of it. So I actually want to pass the mic to some co-hosts that are joining me today.
Hi, my name is Annalise Martinez. I am a junior at Cesar Chavez Academy High School, and I feel like it's very important for students that come from all backgrounds to have the same tools and resources. So my question is, how can school districts ensure that students from low-income communities benefit equally from educational technology, like Chromebooks and other online learning platforms?
Yeah, so I think it's very important, and we do have funding sources to support that. That's why in our legislative priorities, we've promoted, equity funding, we call it, around at-risk students, students below poverty, immigrants, special education. These are very important. And I think during the pandemic, that was one thing we discovered is we had to get the technology to the students when we were virtually online. So ultimately then, the funding can come from the legislator through the grants that are provided, but then it's up to the local districts to go ahead and move towards what we did in Dearborn, a 1-to-1. Chromebook or computer to student and having that technology available. The other challenge they have is then they have to renew that technology every few years. So the funding has to keep coming in to make that happen. So it does become part of local district's responsibility, but it's a state responsibility to make sure it's funded appropriately.
Okay, thanks. We've got another question for you.
Hello, my name is Lucy, and I'm an 11th grade student at Acellus Academy. Now, many students are involved in youth councils or student leadership groups and want to make a real impact. From your perspective, how can students in youth councils work more efficiently with state leaders to help influence education policy?
Well, thank you, Lucy. I would just say getting involved in those groups. I believe heavily, and I have a superintendent student advisory council. Honestly, it helped me make multiple decisions in Dearborn. We changed policy on food service programs, on our strategic plan, on very important things. The students actually taught me how to use Instagram years ago so I could use it appropriately. Now I have a huge following thanks to the students. I think, again, that whole thing, and we need to partner and collaborate, and we need to listen to our students. Actually, the students is what gives me great hope for this nation and this state and this local area because of the power that they have and their ability. So I would say get involved and help your community. And it's going to help you long term to take a leadership role. And, whether it's a charitable situation or just getting involved on a policy level. Just 2 weeks ago, we had students from a civics group that were in Lansing meeting with legislators. So we can do that as well.
That's great. We have one more question from one of our young people for this segment.
Hello, my name is Brian Corona. I am 17 years old. I go to Cesar Chavez Academy High School, and I am a junior. And my question is, in an age of ever-evolving technology, how has the curriculum changed, or the Board of Education tried to change the curriculum to utilize artificial intelligence instead of it being a way for students to cheat their way out of an education?
Well, thank you, Brian. So I would say that we know that AI is here. It's not going away. So we have to embrace it, but embrace it in an appropriate manner. There is a lot of trainings that are going on at the state level. I know Michigan Virtual. I'm going to mention Aaron Boffman and other leaders at the state. The Superintendent Association is providing that. And then we at the department are asking actually for money from the legislature to develop policy and protocol to lead at a statewide level. So it's an excellent question. And so even though we have local control, we want to provide guidance to school districts to ensure that we are using it appropriately.
Thank you. I think it's so interesting because the youth are asking about everything from physical resources, Chromebooks, to curriculum itself and how it integrates into the world that they see around them. AI is such a big influence, as well as, youth voice that gets injected into what they're learning. So the other side of it are educators that have all of these, questions and considerations on their plate. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of educators and some of the challenges that they might be facing today.
Sure. So I think it's so critical that you have the research is clear. You need effective teachers to make a difference. That's why pleased that the state took on the initiative of Grow Your Own programs to enhance the number of teachers in the field. As a local superintendent, it was really tough. Just right around the pandemic when the teacher shortage hit and we didn't have enough, we were competing with local districts. We weren't competing from one another. And in a way, we were kind of body checking our own team because we were having teachers move around. And it wasn't a benefit to all students. And so I think you need to have positive educators in the classroom. We need to support them too. We need to champion them. I think it's also a tough job today's day and age because one of the things I've seen over the last 5 years is, I would say the word civility is, teachers are parents. Teachers are husbands and wives, and they're just people trying to help kids. And a lot of times there's a lot of criticism that can come to them and not an understanding of the important role that they do. And they really are, educators get into it because they want to help make a difference. And so I think we need to remember that as well and remember they're people too, and they're dealing with, their own families and different circumstances they have to deal with, and we should champion them. And that's why I believe heavily in working in collaboration with union leadership as well.
Well, that brings us to the end of this segment, but there's much more ahead with Dr. Glenn Maleyko, State Superintendent of Public Instruction. So don't go anywhere. It's Our State of Education, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation on 760 WJR. Welcome back to our State of Education, proudly supported by the Skillman Foundation, partnering with people to transform education and nurture the brilliance and power of Detroit youth. We're continuing an important conversation with today's special guest. Skillman CEO Angelique Power is back to reintroduce our guest and take us back in.
I am talking with Michigan's new State Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Glenn Maleyko, and talking about, speaking of the brilliance and power of young people, they are hosting the majority of this show at this point. I've lost full control, and they are in the driver's seat. So let's continue on. They've got some really poignant questions for you, and we've got a couple more.
My name is Taylor Peterson. I'm a sophomore at Renaissance High School. And due to recent budget cuts within the Department of Education, many students in urban communities are forced to give up their extracurriculars due to funding or may struggle with outdated learning materials. So my question is, how do you plan to serve as underfunded communities and ensure equal educational opportunities from people of varying backgrounds?
So I think that the funding is critical, and in fact, for underserved populations, I'll just say, look, before becoming state superintendent, I coordinated and created an English language learner advocacy group for that very purpose, to make sure that these students receive those high level of funding. With extracurricular, I would say those are important programs as well, and whether it's the arts, if it's sports, it is a way for students to connect to schools. That is critical. It motivates a lot of students. I know for myself in sports and hockey and different athletics, it also builds positive teamwork and leadership skills. If I didn't have hockey in my life and extracurricular, I wouldn't be here today, to be honest. The teamwork and working together. I served a couple times as a captain of the team, but other times not, just working with the team, working together. So I think it's very important that we promote those areas. And, districts have to make decisions with funding that they're making. But, it is very important that we have extracurricular, and I promote that as well.
That's great. I'm thinking about your priorities and some of the things that you've talked about with arts and with out of school time or summer learning. How does that connect to how people think of the classic, K through 12 school system?
Yeah, the arts is another area that's very, very important. It connects students, and I've seen the talent from going to different promotion or ceremonies that they would have, or they put on a play or some different thing that they're very, very passionate about. I think that's very important that we promote those areas. And sorry, your second part was?
I'm just thinking, this might be a good segue into you as state superintendent. You have these priorities for the state. You are charged with this mandate, along with others, to strengthen schools. And there's so many places to start, and there's so many ways to do it. And I think that that's a little bit of what we're hearing from some of the students. They're asking about whether it's Chromebooks or whether it's AI or whether it's sports or out of school time. How would you talk about what we need to do to strengthen schools?
So, we have literacy as our top priority, which we talked about. And then I would get more students involved in student voice. I think, speaking to the students, let the students take leadership, let them get involved, let them be involved in decision making. I think project-based learning is very important. We had the question about getting involved with the legislature or going in an area. I also would promote, looking at different career options at a younger level. CTE and other programs are all positive. When I was Dearborn superintendent, prided ourselves. We had 3,800 students taking dual enrollment. We were saving tuition of about $20 million a year. Partnered with Henry Ford College at the time, President Russ Cavaluna. So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there are funding pots available. But I would still say this, although we're very appreciative of the funding that has come from the legislature and the governor, we still are not at the same level as some of the high-achieving states when it comes to the funding. So funding is needed, and we know that's important. And as I mentioned before, you need to have a high-quality team and teachers and educators and administrators working together as well.
I want to go to our final question from our youth co-host. Let's turn to Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Maciel, a sophomore at Cass Technical High School. Schools are expected to prepare students for academic success, graduation, and life beyond the classroom. Yet, many students struggle to meet grade level expectations. What is being done to support students who are falling behind?
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Appreciate the question. I do believe in extra time in school. I believe summer learning loss is a critical area that we need to address. Again, my time in a local superintendent, we had very large summer programs to support those students. I think, we would have high level of academics in the morning and then enriching opportunities to allow students to have those ability to get out and see different areas and learn. I think it's very, very important that we do that. Out of school, additional time that's in the governor's budget for, whether it be tutoring or additional support. And then I would just say additional time during the day, built in intervention to teachers and coaches that provide support to students to gain that extra time so that we can move the needle to make sure that all students are at grade level. As I mentioned too, the top 10 plan, we want to revisit it. We want to look at areas like mathematics potentially, in other areas, special education. We know we want to improve, our graduation rates in the state just hit an all-time high, 84%, which is great. However, we're not pleased with where our special education graduation rates are. We know we have some challenges there, so we need to move forward on that as another example.
We have a big gubernatorial election coming up in November, and already the candidates are talking about education. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what would you look forward to in terms of working with the next governor, and what do you hope you guys could collaborate on?
Well, like I said, too, just in a few short months, the Governor Whitmer and I have built a great relationship, and her team. That's the kind of thing we need to do. I think we have to, for the sake of students. I did go to a policy forum at the Michigan Education Association Union Group they held in Detroit last month with some of the gubernatorial candidates, and I had side conversations with them after, and they all want to work together, and I think education is the top priority right now from all that I can see. So I think we need to work in collaboration with our state board, with the governor's office, and again with the legislatures, and just bring people together. So I think I'll be very open-minded to working with the new candidate and be excited to work with whomever that may be.
In our next segment, I want us to go a little bit deeper, because on the Mississippi Marathon miracle, that gets talked about a lot by all of the candidates, and I'm really curious your thoughts on that and where it could go. But just before we close this, is there anything that you would say to not just the young people who contributed to this show, but to youth who are listening all over? What would you say to them about what they should be asking for from their education and what they should be working on?
So I think that, it's our responsibility to provide high quality education so we can demand appropriate support. But there's also responsibility by the youth and parents to partner and work together. One of the things I always say is hard work and determination. I was just playing hockey yesterday, and I'll tell you what, I'm a forechecker. I'm all around that puck. I'm going to be as hard as I can and work as hard as I can. And that's what we need to do. I've gone on, at Wayne State for my PhD. It wasn't about, how smart. It's about your hard work and determination and what you're going to do. So I would tell the youth, I get it. Once in a while, you have an exam and you cram, but cramming is not the way. You need to be prepared. I'm proud of my own son and daughter. She graduated from college, going to be a CPA, and my son, hoping to go to Wayne State for pharmacy school. But I can see and he got some of that from the extracurricular from hockey as well. He gave up hockey, and he's really focusing on his studies, and it's pleasing me a lot to see his own self-discipline with it. We all have to put in the effort. If we want to read, if we want to increase scores, we all need to do it, including the students. So they're a partner in this as well.
And there's also a lot of folks outside of the classroom that are involved in education. So we are a foundation, and we are involved by investing in folks that, from policy advocates to grassroots organizers, supporting teachers and youth. The business community is also really involved in trying to assure education. What when we come back, I want you to talk to us a little bit about what are the best ways to partner around what you're trying to do, and what are the responsibilities that we have to support schools and students.
A lot of ground has been covered with State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Glenn Maleyko, but there's still more to unpack in our final segment right after this break. You're listening to Our State of Education, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation on 760 WJR. Welcome back to Our State of Education, sponsored by the Skillman Foundation, where we follow the will of Detroit youth to dream big and design new possibilities together. Angelique, let's turn it back over to you to reintroduce our guest.
Thank you. I am talking with Dr. Glenn Maleyko, who is our state superintendent. We left it with this question about partnerships and people who are not inside of the school system. You know, our listeners, they care about education, and many of them don't have students in schools, but they care about their communities. Can you talk to us a little bit about what are the ways that those outside of the school system can partner?
Well, the work you're doing, really, philanthropic groups, and appreciate you and your leadership and Skillman in partnering. And thanks for having me here today. It actually shows that, right? What we're doing here today, the meeting we had prior to this, and how can we help each other. We had discussions on policy and initiatives and aligning again. I feel good about as a team, we're aligning for literacy and other things that we know we need to do, funding to support underserved children, which we had our students ask us those questions. You know, business community, very important too, because we need an appropriate workforce for the business community so that students, I talked about graduation rates, but it's not just graduation, it's also college admissions. It's how successful are students after graduation is really where we need to look at. And again, I'm just going to say my local experience, big proponent, and we were like 20% above state averages when it came to college admission rates, over at 73%. And so we want to move that needle in the state. The governor's 60 by 30, 60% having a college degree by 2030. So these are areas that I think are important, and this is how we can work together with the business community. I know, like I mentioned about different careers at an earlier age, we can partner and have the business involved. There's different models, like the Academies model, and I know in the past I partnered with Ford Motor Company, with Henry Ford Hospital, and others to provide those areas to support students.
That's great. As someone with a lot of experience in the classrooms and also in running schools and setting education policies and seeing these results you were just describing, can you talk to us about how resourcing students with greater needs actually benefits more than just the students that are resourced, but benefits everyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's a benefit to society when we have people that are productive citizens that enter a career. And we want people to earn a positive income so that they can support themselves, so that we're not supporting it through, tax dollars and allocations that we pay for different services. So the greater you have success of students entering the workforce, the better off society is as a whole. I used to always use this example too. Like when you're going in a school district, you have a positive school district doing well for students. Look at real estate values in other areas that are important. That's why whenever we would promote an election millage for funding or a bond, we would always go back and say, even if you don't have children in the school district, you're going to benefit. That's just one example, but there's many others.
We talk about that at Skillman, too, that every dollar invested in public schools has a $20 return on property values that increase. And so regardless of whether your student is in public schools, everyone should contribute. When you think about a young person graduating from a Michigan high school, what do you hope for most that they leave with beyond just a diploma?
So as I mentioned too, we want them not just a diploma, but to have the skill sets that are necessary to enter the workforce and be productive, knowing that the workforce is constantly changing with today's day and age of technology. So they need to have the ability to adapt. I use this quote from Scotty Bowman, 9-time Stanley Cup champion, 3 with the Red Wings. And he would say, if you want to win, you need the ability to flexibility to adapt. That's what we need to do. So we need those skills to tool the students so that they can make adaptations as different careers are changing out there. We mentioned AI and other things. So I think that adaptability is essential, and having the ability to work together with team members is also critical.
So you are the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. That's literally your title, right? I shorten it and say State Sup.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, that adaptability, is that in your purview to look at curriculum then and to think about how curriculum should be upgraded?
Sure, and that's why, and we're pleased again in the governor's budget, $100 million ask for high-quality literacy materials to fund school districts that wouldn't have that funding. And we are providing guidance at the Michigan Department as we're looking at different suppliers of those materials to determine which of those are very high quality that we would want to see in the school districts.
So pivoting to a place where we saw a huge increase in literacy, you'll hear people talk about the Mississippi Miracle. We've talked about it as the Mississippi Marathon. Dr. Carrie Wright would say the same thing, the former state superintendent of Mississippi. She talks about how it didn't happen in a minute, but it was a long process. Can you compare Michigan to Mississippi? Where are the learnings that we can take from Mississippi and implement here, and where are we different?
So I would just say, I mean, we're Michigan, but we can take some of the positive things they're doing. For example, we're looking at the science of reading training in other areas. And, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's what Mississippi said. It's going to take time, so you need to stick with it over time. But so I think we can look at Mississippi, what are the best practices, and we can gain to help us. But we shouldn't just look at Mississippi. We should look at Connecticut and Massachusetts and New Jersey and other states that are achieving at a high level, and to see too, how are they funding underserved children and equity and, you know, English language learners, because there's things there that they are ahead of Michigan when it comes to those areas. That was one of the reasons why I'm doing a listening tour. I studied heavily before I interviewed for this position, and one of the things, effective state superintendents were out there. These states that I just mentioned, they did listening tours to bring people together.
So is part of your vision then to crowdsource or to pull the best ideas from people across the state in order to set where you want to go?
Yeah, I think we want their ideas. We want to provide direction as well. You know, there was a great quote from Martin Luther King Jr., and it was, you know, consensus building, but it's not consensus. It's providing direction as to where we need to go while bringing people together in collaboration. And I think that's what we need to do, and what I need to do is provide direction, but bring that input together so that we all get on board and we can understand what that mission is. And for me, I told the board, I'm going to pull it out again. I said, if you hire me, this is what I'll be doing. It's not just the sign, it's what it means. Do we live and breathe it every day? And I believe heavily in that. And I believe, you know, leading by example and you are as well with your, you know, just today having these students, great challenging questions. Some of them were tough too. They were, you know, so they were, yeah. So that's where I would say, yeah, just again, working together. And I think it's very positive. So appreciate the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maleyko. If you heard a sound of that was actually a sign being pulled out and open. It is the real deal. He really does have a sign in his pocket that says students first.
I'm going to use that too.
Yeah,
so when people know.
Listen for the shoo.
There we go. I like it.
So paint a picture for us. You know, there's so much that's happening in the world that sometimes it's hard to like remember the vision of where we're going. It is 5 years from now. They just renewed your contract, right?
Yes, or extended it.
Extended it, which is pretty cool. I mean, you've been with us for a few months, and they were like, "This guy's doing great.
Oh.
Let's renew his contract."
Well, it's the team. It's everyone.
It's the
working
team.
together.
Yes, absolutely. So take us on this vision of, what is it, 4 years from now, 5 years from now? What do we see in Michigan education? What's different?
I mean, we want steady progress in working together, having positive teamwork where we come together, and then we have results. We need to have results. So it's not just the collaboration and working together. You need that. You need the relationships, but then you need the data to support what you're doing. And you know what? It probably won't be perfect. We may have some trials and tribulations, and if that's the case, we look at the data, we adapt. We look at changes as needed, and we have to do it for the sake of the students that we're providing. You know, our greatest quantity really is our students, and making sure that they are supported and they're effective when they, you know, graduate from high school.
And to get there, sometimes you have to make some tough choices, right? People have put on the table everything from too many school districts. Some gubernatorial candidates talk about, is it superintendents that we need to hold accountable? Is it principals that we need to? Is it educators? Everyone's always looking for the fix. What are some of the barriers that you think need to be confronted on this journey toward the vision that we see?
Well, we all should be held accountable, not just those that you mentioned, but everyone. Society in general is accountable for it. That's another area that I'm passionate about is school accountability. That's where I did my dissertation research, looked at No Child Left Behind. I had federally protected NAEP data. NAEP is the National Assessment of Education Progress, and did a comparative analysis with 4 different states, including Michigan, and looked at the effective things that states were doing or were not doing when it came to school accountability. So I think we want to embrace accountability, but we need effective accountability that provides support so it gives the information we need to drive instruction for the benefit of the students.
Dr. Maleyko, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know you're heading to 4 schools to read to young people today. We really appreciate you sitting down and talking to us. Leadership really matters. Who sets the tone for the country, who leads the charge for the state, who's at the helm of schools, who is on our school boards, who shows up to the polls when there's a school millage, who stands at the crosswalk and helps elementary school kids get home safe. There are just so many ways every single one of us can support education. And as you all know, dear listeners, we feature folks at the forefront of change, and we explain to you how you can get involved and why it matters to you. So thank you for joining us and talking to us about our state of education.
That wraps up this month's edition of our State of Education here on 760 WJR. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next month with more voices, more insight, and more hope for the future of Michigan students on our State of Education, only on 760 WJR.